Welcome, everybody. We are so happy to be with you. If you don't know me, I'm Nicole Ramirez. I'm the Training and Technical Assistance Coordinator for the Northeast Regional Collaborative. I'm presenting with my two colleagues. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves real quick.
Hello, Jennifer Blanchette McConnell. I work in the Central Region, the Mid-Jersey Cares REIC. Same position and title, and we're located at the Central Jersey Family Health Consortium. I think I got both logos on here. Nicole?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nichole Gooding, same position, TA for Family Link. So happy and excited to be with all of you, and we can get started.
All right, we're going to be talking about when 1 + 1 = 3. We're going to look at a triadic approach and how we foster parent-child connections through collaboration and coaching and relationships. And let's dive in. All right, so I want to start us with looking at this quote, and I would love for you guys to put things in the chat as it comes to mind. No significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. So spend a moment and just think about that. What comes to your mind? Are there any relationships in your life that come to mind? Any experiences, whether it's work or personal, that come to your mind? And if you are able to or willing to share any of those thoughts in the chat, that would be wonderful. All right, Marin, how it is so important to form good relationships with parents and practitioners. Barbara's thinking about trust, and Jill's in agreement about those relationships. Any other thoughts? Every family and child is so different. You learn from each of them. That's right, how to approach it. I love that you're already thinking about that. We're individualizing with each family. Anna's thinking, it makes her think about no man is an island. Yeah, yeah, we're not meant to be all by ourselves. Makes Cheryl think of feeling empowered. Danae's thinking about learning occurring in a relationship, and for adults, even solitary learning, like reading, there's implies a relationship. For babies and toddlers, the relationship is with the parent. Um, and that's right. I think probably for most of us, maybe that's what we're thinking of, right? When we're first reading this quote, we might be thinking of the parent-child relationship and how vital that is for the child's learning. We also are going to think a little bit today about the relationships that the parent has, and how that's going to help with the parent's learning. So, there might be some shifting in the ways that you're considering this as we go on. Go ahead, Jen. So I want to call your attention to these two relationships. Um, it's really important to recognize that the relationship between the parent and child and the relationship between the practitioner and the parent are really inherent to our work in early intervention. So we're going to really spend this session thinking about how we give intentional attention to support both of these relationships in ways that really lead to those positive child and family outcomes that we're aiming for. And I want to remind us, keep us grounded in that it's really interactions over time that are what build relationships. It's same for the parent-child, it's same for the parent and practitioner. And it's important to really recognize the role of attunement in those interactions. And interactions which have attunement are a necessary ingredient for building those positive, nurturing relationships. Attunement is that feeling what it feels like for you to feel, and the way that I might be demonstrating how I'm trying to feel with you by how I use my actions, gestures, and behaviors. And it's dynamic and active process. it's really important to be reading cues and responding to cues, responding to the needs in the relationship. And it's so individualized. It's important to be in that relationship with each person. You can go ahead, Jen. So we love this quote by Jerry Paul. How you see me is how I begin to see myself. And really looking at it through the lens of that parallel process. So the child is learning how to see themselves through their relationship with their parents. And the parents might be learning new ways to see themselves by their relationship with their practitioner. And that's such the power of the parallel process. The parents are the ones who have the most influence in the child's life. We like to call them the agents of change for the child. And so when we are able to really cultivate those supporting relationships, um, we are able to support that further ability for the child to feel the same thing that the parent is feeling. Jen, you can move the slide. I maybe should have just requested. And when we're thinking about that attunement that happens with babies and parents, we really need to think about serve and return, which is that responsive back and forth between the child and the caregiver. Um, Serve and return plays such a huge role in the child's brain development, those neural pathways and connections that get made when they have someone who's responding to them in warm and nurturing ways. And it's essential for healthy growth and development. Serve and return really relies on the parent being able to read the baby's cues and then respond to those cues. And as they're doing that, the baby is also learning how to then respond back to the parent. And it really helps to build that relationship between the parent and child over time. In early intervention, we also have an opportunity to notice the ways in which the parent is responding to the child and the cues that the child is giving to the parent. We have ways to support and notice that with the parent. And that can really support the parent's ability to be better at returning those cues. It's a way for us to really focus on the strengths that are inherent in that relationship with the parent and child, but also observe where maybe there are some challenges and where support might be able to be provided. And looking at this quote, when we build a mattering ecosystem that helps adults feel valued and significant, we're creating the conditions for children to feel like they matter too. Um, this really made us think of the importance of that parent-practitioner relationship. Really how we need to find attunement in our interactions with parents, so that we can help give this sense of mattering and belonging. And again, just going back to that why is that the parents are the ones who are such a big influence in their child's life and can help make the child feel like they matter too. And it's why we want to again focus on that strengths-based perspective. We can't just tell a family that they matter. It's something that we really have to build together, that we have to respond to them in ways that are nurturing and supportive and showing them that mattering. And when we're doing this, it's really important to be considering where the parent might be starting from. What are some of the messages that a parent might have already received about how they matter? Or maybe are they receiving messages about not mattering? And that could be from our system, it could be from wider systems or other places in the family's life. And it's also really important to recognize the inherent power imbalance that can happen in relationships between a practitioner and a parent. Um, we need to be mindful of how the individual parent might see the individual practitioner and how the parent might see the system that the practitioner represents. All of these things are something that are important to consider when we're building that relationship with the parent, when we're having interactions to help support this attunement process with parents.
Yeah, and this quote is making, and some of your comments are really making me think about the keynote this morning, in terms of helping the adults feel valued and significant. and specific ways we might do that. Uh, and so when we talked about both of these relationships, we need to think about how to support both of them. And Dr. Sexton talked a lot about the strategies we can use to really, with us, the practitioner, and I'm using that term broadly, the whoever's working with the family, including service coordinators, um, and thinking about how we are with that parent, but with also this focus on what's going on between the parent and child. And sometimes I do this because my hands talk better than my mouth. But sort of what's between the parent and child, and how do we sort of support both relationships using the evidence-based practices? So very consistent with what was talked about this morning. We're going to give you some terms and some strategies that are come from the Peewee model. That says the parents interacting with infants and toddlers. But this is one way to sort of conceptualize and guide how we're supporting both relationships in parallel. So just to go with some definitions, reminding ourselves that when we're talking about a dyad, we're really just talking about the child with their adult, right? Usually the parent can be the child care provider, right? And you see that there's the child alone and there's the parent or the caregiver alone, but there's this back and forth. And the dyad is really where we're trying to aim and support what's happening in between them as well. So that's what we mean by a dyad. Just trying to get the little ball to go next. And then when we talk about a triad, you see the dyads in the middle, and you see the practitioner or the person facilitating what's happening between the parent and child, the caregiver and child. And so it's really a triad as a dyad plus a practitioner. So it might give you a little hint in the answer to the question in the title, right? When 1 + 1 = 3, but one dyad plus one practitioner. And the idea of emphasizing using our strategies to support what's happening between the child and the parent. And with the ultimate goal of building that parent's competence, their confidence, and the idea of mutual enjoyment between the parent and child. I was so glad to hear the speaker this morning she talked about families, we want to increase enjoyment of each other. And so it's not just us telling the parent, but sort of finding these moments where we can kind of highlight what's happening. And those are what we call triadic strategies. Right. So these are things that I do or we do as a practitioner to facilitate what's happening between the parent and child. It sort of connects to I'm so proud. It connects to all of the workshops today. But it's the idea that we're doing something to facilitate that serve and return, that back and forth between the parent and the child. We're facilitating, we're building that confidence and that competence and that enjoyment. And we're building skills. So some of the strategies we want to kind of highlight here, and we'll come back to them later. You see, starting sort of with that foundation of really establishing the dyadic context. So in the previous slide, you saw the practitioner sitting outside of the dyad, right? They're not trying to be a part of the dyad so much as support the dyad. And then you see these other strategies here. We're going to talk about them on the next slide as well. So these are sort of the definitions. These are things many of us are already doing and you don't even know that it has a name. So things that you're doing in a very intentional way to arrange the environment, to highlight and maintain and increase the interaction between the parent and the child. We know that serve and return is literally building the brain architecture of children. It's not just, well, parents, you're important and I'll tell you what to do. It's you're actually more important as the parent. And it's sort of what she said this morning, what happens in between sessions is where change happens. And so how can we intentionally rearrange the environment so we can support that? A lot of work around affirming parental competence. So this is really engaging our observation skills we talked about this morning in really noticing and finding opportunities to really praise and just, kind of highlight something the parent is already doing that is supporting their child's development. Sometimes we're going to sort of spotlight the interaction. We're going to focus attention and spotlight and use our reflective questioning, as she mentioned this morning, to invite the parent to reflect on, what's happening with the child. What do you think the child will do? Did you see how she looked to you when she was trying to find the toy? These kinds of things that, they require maybe some more knowledge on our part, and then we're giving it back to the parent to kind of wonder about. We also provide developmental information, right? So we have an opportunity to share something about what's happening from the child's perspective, really just to deepen the parent's capacity to notice and interpret their child's needs. And there's lots of ways we do that. Modeling, I'd like to highlight the word momentarily. I know we use a lot of modeling, but that's not the only thing. And I love that the speaker started with relational capacity building strategies. I think that's relational strategies are that because we start with that relationship. And then at times we may momentarily kind of take over the parent's turn in the interaction. And then we step back and give them a chance to practice. Maybe we do some feedback. Maybe we talk about what's happening. And then we also sometimes are going to suggest specific suggestions. I wonder what would happen if you gave her a little more support at her hips, or if you put the toy just out of her reach. What do you think she would do? And inviting that. So I'm last minute weaving in some of the things from this morning, but these fit so nicely together. I think they're just sort of different words for doing the same thing. So these are triadic strategies. Nicole.
All right. So to help us continue having this conversation about what those triadic strategies look like, we wanted to drop in just a really quick video clip to help really highlight those two relationships that Nicole started us off with that are really inherent in the work in early intervention. So for those of you who are not familiar with this show, this is The Mandalorian. And it's basically about this bounty hunter, and that's the character that you'll see in all of the armor. And he's decided to take this journey of reuniting the child, Baby Yoda, Grogu, with a Jedi, because he wants to protect this child from the Empire. They're convinced that this child has this capacity to use the Force. So in this video, they've finally connected with the Jedi, and the Jedi is going to try and figure out, does this child really have this capacity? So in this video, really think about the Jedi as kind of that facilitator of the relationship between the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda or Grogu. And what I would really like you to do is just, what do you notice? What do you notice happening in both relationships? What do you notice in the triadic relationship between the three of them? What are you noticing in the dyadic relationship between the Mandalorian and the child? And then we're going to come back after the video and just talk a little bit about what you noticed and what you saw.
Do you hear it?
Let's see what knowledge is lurking inside that little mind.
It's pretty low.
All right, let me pause it for a second. Why is that? Yeah. Is it? Let me know. Is that any better?
Let's see what knowledge is
I can't
lurking
even
inside
hear
that
it.
little mind.
Did
Can you hear it?
Did you share it through Zoom? The sound?
I did. I did. I stopped it to. All right, let me try. I'm going to change to something else. Hold on. How about now?
Let's see what knowledge is lurking inside that little mind.
Is it working?
I didn't hear it at all, and Nicole's volume was very low as well. Different than yours, so I'm not sure if it's something going on there.
Oh man.
Jen, try to turn up your computer. I mean, it's a pretty low clip. We're kind of quiet anyway, but see if you can turn up your volume on your computer and see if that
You
helps.
want to try to share it? Because I can't, it's up at 100.
Okay, hold on one second.
I could hear it fine. So some of us can hear it and some of us can't. So maybe just
Oh,
play it and
okay.
describe it after.
Let's put closed caption on. How about? Okay, one more time.
You didn't share yet, right, Jen?
Oh, I'm playing it. Oh my God. Share sound. I don't know why it's not working. How about now? I'm very stressed out about this.
Now return the stone to me, Grogu.
He doesn't understand.
He does. It's okay. The stone, Grogu. I sense much fear in you. He's hidden his abilities to survive over the years. Let's try something else. Come over here.
He's stubborn.
Not him. You. I want to see if he'll listen to you.
That would be a first.
I like firsts. Good or bad, they're always memorable. Now hold the stone out in the palm of your hand. And tell him to lift it up.
All right, kid. Lift the stone.
Grogu.
Grogu. Come on. Take the stone. You see? I told you he's stubborn.
Try to connect with him.
Grogu. Do you want this? Well, go ahead. That's right, take it. Come You can have it. Come on. Good job. Good job, kid. You see that? That's right. I knew you could do it. Very good.
He's formed a strong attachment to you.
You can stop it here, Jen. All right. So hopefully everyone was able to hear all of it at this point. But I wanted just to come together and just see, what did you notice? What did you notice about the triad? So all three of them together. What did you notice happening between the two adults in the scene? What did you notice happening between that dyadic relationship when we were thinking and seeing the Mandalorian and Grogu kind of interacting with one another? What were some of the things that you were noticing?
I did notice the gentleman in the armor regulate himself by taking that deep breath. Um, he then got down on the level of Grogu. The tone of his voice changed. Um, and I think I actually saw a dopamine release when it all went down.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for that. And I'm also seeing a lot of things coming into the chat, right? So, this idea of connection and trust, right? And whether we were thinking about that with the dyadic relationship and even with, the Jedi as the facilitator, right? Think about all the attempts that she had to make to kind of help him to understand, yeah, you're connected, right? You're connected with this child. Let's try if you're the one that's actually doing the activity versus me, right? What happens if you actually say his name instead of just calling him kid the entire time, right? So noticing that as well. Trust and belief in each other, modeling, also noticing getting down at the end on the child's level. As he denied the learning was impacted by the connection between the child and his parent, right? And that was kind of what the Jedi was getting to, right? There's something here. There's a bond here. There's an attachment here. This child has been carried around in this whole series being saved by this person. So there's this sense of safety and trust that's now present in that relationship. I like how gently she directed him to call the little guy Grogu instead of just kid, right? So coming back to that child's name. I saw some hand over hand modeling. Right. And Barbara noticing he was very quick to say that he didn't understand, right? And maybe that was a way for him to kind of protect the child, right? He didn't understand you. This child speaks a whole nother language. No one understands what he's saying. So there was this idea of maybe that was to protect the child from feeling like he wasn't able to do it. So just kind of noticing, again, that was a way to notice what's happening in that relationship, what that connection is like. I see Sadira praise after the task was completed and how excited, right? So back to Kathy's comment, noticing that dopamine release, right? He was so excited that this child was actually able to do it. I see Elba mentioning how he kept using terms like he's stubborn, right? And the importance of presuming competence. So not only for the child within that dyadic relationship, but also with the Jedi, right? Presuming competence, that he was going to be able to figure out a way to connect with this child to see what he could really do. So I love that presuming competence. Jill, how one experience can have so much impact. So if anyone's going to go back and watch the show after that scene, you see how their relationship changes throughout the time, right? Just through noticing that one moment of connection, right? There really is a relationship here. I see Amy, how the woman let the man see the child was not stubborn and he got the object when the connection was established. The other interesting thing to really know about that video is that initially he tries the stone again, right? And Grogu was very disinterested with that stone. The other item that he pulls out is something from the ship. And this child has been grabbing at this item all along. And so him kind of pausing and figuring out, well, how do I connect? What do I know, right? And going back to that to really help to engage that and help this child to feel successful. I see Barbara teaches us patience, right? Patience, trust, connection. It took a while to get there. They had to try some different things. They had to figure out how they were going to attune in the relationship, right? If we're thinking about the dyadic relationship. And we also had to attune that facilitator, the Jedi, had to attune to what was happening here, right? The child felt the relationship, but how can I help the parent or the Mandalorian figure out that there's a relationship here, there's a connection here, and how can we bring that forward? Anyone else? Anything else before we move forward?
Without typing it, I just wanted to say that when a child watches the parents collaborating and supporting and working together, the difference that makes for the child believing in themselves to be able to do something. So that child being very observant and watching probably how the mother supported the father, and then in turn trusted the father to help. So like I said earlier, good, bad, the impact of a relationship and what it has on a child, and how they see themselves and their capabilities. I didn't want to type all that.
No worries, no worries. Thank you for sharing that. But yeah, what did, this child in this scenario see in that interaction, that back and forth, that collaboration that was going on, to his benefit, right? To figure out what was happening for him. I think we can move.
Yeah. And then she helped him reframe. I thought the
Yeah.
facilitator, the practitioner helped him, right? And so I imagine some of these triadic strategies were used, right? Like the way she stepped out of the dyad, and that she was able to then got an opportunity to highlight some things, focus attention, developmental information, using those more. So that was cool.
And suggesting that he step in, right, instead of her being the one to kind of have that active engagement with the child. So just moving our conversation along, this quote by Brene Brown: "The energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment." So just want to pause here for a moment and give folks an opportunity to think about maybe what's coming to mind, right? Is there a relationship or an interaction that's coming to mind for you? Maybe you're thinking about, a time when you have felt seen, heard, and valued. And back to some earlier slides where Nicole talked about maybe there were instances where you didn't feel seen, heard, or valued, right? Where you didn't feel like you matter, right? What is cultivated, right? Or what needs to be cultivated in the relationship in order to get here? How do we get families, parents, caregivers, childcare folks to feel that they're seen, heard, and valued, and they can give and receive without judgment? And, thinking about that video, one of the things that I really appreciated with the Jedi, right, the person that we said was the facilitator, she really came into that relationship with the dyad with a lot of curiosity, right? She didn't say that she knew this child, she knows all the Jedi, she knows all the things, right? But there is this sense of curiosity. How can we figure out how to open this up, right? How can we figure out how to help this child reach their capacity? How can I help this parent figure understand that there's a connection here and that they're valued and that there are things that they bring in that relationship that are inherently available in that relationship that are strengths? And how can I help them to recognize that and go back to those strengths to support that development for that child moving forward? So there was a lot of, assuming competence, attunement that had to happen within that scene, right? Figuring out where, the parent figure's frame was, right? What was he thinking? What was he experiencing? How was he feeling? And what did she need to do to reframe or shift so that he could see things in a different way and be able to really respond, right? Get into that give and take, that serve and return with the child, and eventually, get to see, what he could help him do and have that really great dopamine burst. So again, I think that brings us back to this idea of this parallel process. What happens in one relationship can really impact the other. So it was really crucial for that facilitator character to attune with that parental figure, to figure out how can I help him feel seen, heard, and valued, right? And how can I then help him to have that confidence to connect with the child And that way we can kind of move things along, and then everyone gets to experience, right, that dopamine burst, and how wonderful that can be for the dyad. So I think that this is going to send us into our conversation about dyadic strategies, where we can really start to think about, well, what are the things that are already inherent within the dyad in that relationship that we can really start to think about as strengths, and really bring in, the parents, and understanding that there are things that they're already doing that they're really wonderful and fantastic.
Yeah, and I see some comments in the chat, right, that are really speaking more to the connection and the relationship happening first, in order to, again, first connection, and someone wants, and that it takes time sometimes to kind of get to a point where you feel more confident as a facilitator. I was thinking about that parallel, and Dr. Sexton mentioned it too, with she said, that you also have stable ways of thinking about things, and need your own dopamine kind of releases. And Kathy, thanks. The long version of that quote, I did not know that, and and when they derive sustenance and strength from that relationship. And that's what our goal is. So we know it's about the relationship between the parent, the child, the caregiver, their child. They're already doing stuff, good stuff, right? The ways they are with one another. And when we're really aware and can name and define what's already occurring, really being intentional, we can be more intentional in ways that do deepen and support and strengthen that relationship. And hopefully the family sees us in that way too. So in the Peewee model, these are some of the dyadic types of interactions that parents are probably already doing and don't even know, and give you a great opportunity to use a triadic strategy, right? So if a parent's getting down, like our dad here, and looking at the baby, right, and getting down to her level, and getting some eye gaze and some interaction, he's setting himself up. He's setting the stage for interaction, and that gives us an opportunity to affirm that and say, you're really setting up good interaction. You're getting to her level. And then a parent might say, I didn't even know I was doing that good stuff. It's like, yep, that's all kind of right. So it gives us this opportunity to go back and forth between the dyadic and triadic strategies. Families are already, many parents are already doing a lot of that, maintaining something that is making themselves interesting, an interesting partner, maintaining interest and attention, and really joining the child's focus of attention, and then following, giving us that opportunity to kind of then set up that idea of back and forth, turn taking and reciprocal interactions, right? Responding to a cue, pausing, and then waiting for the child's response. And we have the opportunity to sort of connect our triadic strategies to what's happening, or what we're trying to build happening within the dyad. And then, maybe a little bit more complex strategy, but families are then able to maybe support and scaffold, right, what their child's doing. So give them just enough support, right? The Goldilocks, just enough support in order to do a task. And Kathy, I see you've really started thinking a lot more about how the environment can be set up to encourage this. So a lot of it, can be even just in terms of setting up the environment and our positioning as well. And then that gives us, these are the things that acknowledging what parents are already doing really also helps us to respond to their uniqueness, and understand things from their culture, their families, their ways of being with each other, and to reinforce that, which is probably more likely they're going to feel seen and heard and connected.
So coming back to that idea about these dyadic interaction styles, and really intentionally noticing what's already there. We want to continue, as facilitators, that we're attuning to the dyad so that we're able to support that. And in order to use those triadic strategies, you really have to start from a place of noticing what's already there, what's naturally occurring, what fits within that family's culture, what fits within that family's natural style of being with their child, what do they already enjoy. And it's from there that we can begin to really support parents in using what they're already doing a little bit more intentionally, with a little bit more focus to really support those ongoing, that ongoing development that we want to see. And a lot of times when people say, parent coaching, we're a parent coaching model, we're a parent coaching model, this is really what we're talking about. We're talking about recognizing the strengths, recognizing the things that are already inherently there, and helping parents to really recognize you are the agent of change. You are, potentially their safe space, right? Their nurturing space, their responsive space. And the ways in which that you interact with your child where you find joy, we can use that. We can join with you and we can help you to use that and utilize that in ways that feel natural, right? And feel good, build the confidence, build the competence, and just continue to create wonderful things for that dyad. So when we're thinking about those dyadic interaction strategies, we're not trying to, make families adopt things. We're really spending time observing and recognizing what brings them joy and where they naturally go to, and how can we use those ways to really foster that development. Next slide. So again, coming back to the idea of attunement, right? We've been talking about attunement, that the matching, creating the match within the relationship, thinking about how adults really have the power in that dyadic relationship to make those adjustments, to meet the child where they are and really match with them. But as we're thinking about and talking about relationships, we know that there are mismatches that occur in relationships. We know that there are ruptures that occur in relationships. And so it's the working through those mismatches for the dyad. It's the working through those ruptures for those parent and facilitator relationships that really help to create that space within the relationship that we talked about earlier, that we can cultivate these spaces that are non-judgmental, where we can have that trust, where we can have that connection, where we can have that communication. But it's about focusing on the relationship. So making sure that we're attuned, right? And trying to figure out how that person is feeling, what they might be feeling or experiencing, and also demonstrating to them that that's what we're trying to get to. But also having the courage and the confidence and the curiosity to kind of work through those mismatches. What was the cue that I missed? What was the response that I missed or that I misinterpreted, right? If we're talking about adult relationships, and how helpful that is in building stronger connections, not only for the parent and the child, but also for the system and all of the families and the providers that we work with. Next slide. So we just want to end with this visual, and I think this brings the whole model and just the whole day being focused on this coaching practice, right? At the center of everything that we do is the dyad. So all of the wonderful things and all the strengths that family, that dyad brings to the table, we want to take time to really notice that and highlight that. Once we can kind of think about and really name what's going really well, we can then think about how, you all as a facilitator can attune to what's happening in that relationship, and then begin to think more intentionally about what you're going to do to continue to support the relationship that is that dyad. So we always want to keep the dyad and that relationship in the dyad at the center of everything that we do.
I like this one
Oh, yeah.
because it really highlights how they go together. We're very excited about this slide.
And I think, it's in early intervention, it's really easy to we're focused on IFSP outcomes, and we're focused on certain things that we know are the parent's priority. But when we kind of take that step back and really look at the ways that the parent and child are interacting, and the ways that they are, evolving with each other, supporting those interactions and supporting the ways that they are with each other is also going to help, both with our IFSP outcomes and with strengthening those connections and those opportunities for the way that the parent is responding to the child and the way that the child is responding to the parent. And I really loved, Nicole, when you were talking about curiosity, when there's a mismatch or curiosity, when there's a rupture. Um, I think that can be hard to do sometimes, but that goes back to that non lack of judgment. That when we can really just have that open mind and be curious about what's going on in the relationship, it's going to lead to, I think, more ability to use these strategies to support um, the whole triadic relationships.
And one last thing that you piqued and sparked in my mind, this idea of curiosity. I think sometimes when we come into situations where there are mismatches, we assume what that other person's perspective or experience was. And we're like, well, they just didn't want to do this, or the baby really meant this, right? But if we can just be a little bit more curious, right? Take a little bit more time, whether it's to ask a question, hey, could you, clarify that for me again or repeat that again? Where might that move you in terms of getting into that match, getting into that attunement, and then how does that help the work, right? The work that we're trying to get to overall. So our last slide, just wanted to highlight the video again, right? How will your inner Jedi elevate and foster connections between the child and their parent or caregiver? So what is it, right? And we're also taking this space of this perspective of competence, right? You've already got it in you, right? The force is already there. So how will you kind of focus on it so that you're always elevating and fostering connections through all of your work?
Use the force. And I think it really ties nicely to this morning, right? So, this is how 1 + 1 = 3. There is a QR code there. We have a Slido, a word cloud. You're also welcome to put it in the chat or unmute and share. What's kind of one thing you're going to do or taking away from this? And I think I can hop over to the poll. I like that, Kathy.
Yeah, I like
You
that.
want to say more about that? And then Fran?
I just feel that all the foundational principles of infant and early childhood mental health are just so central to the relationship-based nature of the services that we want to foster. And I would love to kind of layer that relationship-based style, all the things that go along with that, attunement, attachment, serve and return, on top of like a coaching model and see like where that all can connect. Because I'm in my experience more recently, I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I thought we couldn't say coaching." I thought that was a bad word. But certainly coaching is rooted in the pyramid model. So, it's out there, it's evidence-based. So I would like to kind of look at that interplay between the relationship-based infant, early childhood mental health and coaching.
I really like that because the coaching we heard about today was not really it wasn't really directive, right? Like coaching, the elements of good coaching is I'm going to observe a little. I'm going to give some feedback. I'm going to ask reflective questions. First, I need to attune with someone, right? So I think attuning and connecting, again, those two relationships, one with the parent and the caregiver and one with the child, parent and child. And you know what I mean? Practitioner, parent, child. Yeah, and Kathleen's just reiterating it's important to develop a trusting relationship with the caregiver, and support the caregiver and child. So I love some of what you guys are coming up with, the idea of the importance of connection. Yeah, it's all about the relationships. Relationships, right? On many levels. And that includes even you with your colleagues, with your supervisors, with us, etc. So I love the ideas of including siblings, and really encouraging families. I'm looking at the chat. Brands encouraging families to enjoy more shared experiences as a family, trying to help them see that they have the force within them, right? I love that. The force is really the foundation um, of infant and early childhood mental health. Be one with the force of the dyad. I love that.
If I can, I just, as I was listening and watching, I'm also just thinking about that word attunement and that it has tune in it. And this idea of when you
Mm,
think of tune, you think of musical, you think of rhythm, you think of the fact that some of us, the tunes that we listen to change pending our mood, our need, our want, our desire. Sometimes a tune is evocative, sometimes a tune is calming. So, this idea of attuning to what a child and a family needs really requires space and time. And sometimes we're too quick, right? We need to slow
yeah,
down with that tune. Sometimes we need to speed up the tune. Sometimes we need to ask, is this the tune that you need today? You know?
yeah.
So I'm really just thinking about that word a lot today.
That's such a good analogy. I'm even thinking as you're talking, Tanya, tuning is an active process. It's like the dials, right, from this morning, right? That you're actively readjusting and readjusting what's happening here between me and the parent. What are they thinking? What am I thinking? Wonder why the child did that. What is your thought? Are we even do we think we're listening to the same tune? So I think that active, I hadn't thought of that before you said that, but that activeness of tuning means it's an ongoing active dynamic process that happens, and you keep happening. It keeps happening.
And it
Um,
involves so much recognition, I think,
yeah,
of where someone is because it's not attuning to me will look different on any given day, on any given hour of the day. If I'm hungry, it's gonna be harder to attune with me. Um, and I think like recognizing that, not just assuming that this has worked in the past with this parent, um,
yeah,
involves that real being there, being present with.
yeah. Being present with, and Amy's also pointing out, trying to reflect on what's working and getting a sense of what's happening inside the parent. Who maybe isn't feeling like things are going well. So then I'm going to have to bring in some of that feedback and some of that positive affirmation, and even if it's the smallest thing, but maybe focusing some information attention or giving some developmental information. I'm tuning, right? I'm tuning my instrument to that. And to that end, you need to tune your instruments as well. So we want you to encourage you to take time to find ways that help you connect, help you reflect, help you recharge your batteries as well, because this is really intense and meaningful work. Um, and you need a chance to tune yourselves as well.
I love this work
Progress.
though.
I know, it's so cool. Yeah. Any other questions before we hop back for our final reflection of the day?